Could you go ahead and start the recording? Okay, well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Workplace Charging for Governments. We're really glad you are joining us. And first, I'm Julie Bond, and I'm with Best Workplaces for Commuters. I'm located here in Tampa, Florida at the University of South Florida. And today we have three presenters that I know you're going to enjoy. We have Brandon Smith with EVNoire. We have Jay Donnaway with Tacoma Public Utilities, Tom Pacheco with Colorado Department of Transportation. And so those will be our speakers for today's webinar. Okay, here is an overview of our agenda. You'll hear just a little bit about Best Workplaces for Commuters and the EVAL program. I'll introduce each speaker and then I will turn the time over to them. Now, we do love questions, so please post your questions in the Q&A box. You can also chat with each other anytime. So we're going to address all the questions at the end of the session. So just to help me as I moderate, if you do have a question specifically for Brandon, Jay, or Tom, please just indicate who you would like me to direct the question to, and we will ask that question. And thank you very much for that. A little bit about Best Workplaces for Commuters. This is hosted in partnership with Best Workplaces for Commuters and the EVAL program. And this year we hit a new record for 2024, thanks to our really great members. So our BWC membership includes employers, multi-employer developments, universities and colleges, and BWC partners. And we're impacting over 1.7 million commuters. So go to bestworkplaces.org for more information, or you can send me an email if you're interested in joining. Okay, a little bit about the EVAL program and Forth. So again, Best Workplaces has partnered with Forth to promote the EVAL program on a national basis. And Forth's mission is to electrify transportation by bringing people together to create solutions that reduce pollution and barriers to access. And then you'll hear quite a bit more about EVAL during the program. Okay, now on to our speakers. I have just a little brief introduction for each one, and then I'm going to turn the time over to Brandon. So Brandon is a dynamic leader and passionate about contemporary technology, electrification, and decarbonization. Brandon has worked with urban mobility, vehicle sharing, electric vehicles, electric vehicle infrastructure, and autonomous vehicles for 8 years, involved with large companies such as General Motors and early stage startups. He's an advocate for equitable EV adoption, and I've gotten to know Brandon through all of our webinars and through the EVAL partnership, so I'm very happy to have Brandon with us today. And next we have Jay Donnaway. He serves as a resource conservation manager at Tacoma Power. Tacoma Power is a 100% hydropower municipal utility serving over 186,000 customers in Pierce County, Washington. Jay is a certified energy manager in the Association of Energy Engineers with over 30 years experience in conservation of materials, energy, and water resources. So we're really excited to welcome Jay. And then third, we have Tom Pacheco, and he is a leader with over 30 years experience in the alternative energy transportation sector and presently works for Colorado Department of Transportation, or CDOT. For the last 7 years, Tom has focused on the electrification of CDOT fleet and facilities. Tom's finishing up a project at 23 different CDOT locations. And this project requires working with 11 different utility providers, 16 counties, and 4 different Forest Service regions. So you'll hear from Tom also today about all of that. So now I'm going to turn the time over to Brandon.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate it. And I want to say welcome to everybody here. My name is Brandon Smith, and I represent EVNoire, and we're a full-service consultancy of diverse e-mobility professionals, including engineers, transportation mobility professionals, mobility research and data analysts, EV charging subject matter experts, urban planners, and more. And we're here to talk a little bit about workplace charging. So I'll switch to the next slide, and I want to define workplace charging for us, right? So we all kind of know about, charging at home home, you can get a charger installed in your garage or your backyard. And then we also know about charging in the wild, whether it's like a Tesla supercharger or the charger at your local grocery store. What workplace charging is just exactly what it sounds like, charging at a workplace. And why this is important is because it's kind of the third frontier that we need to tackle in this electrification transition that we're going through as a nation and as a world. So workplace charging also helps to just bridge the gap for people that, maybe can't install chargers at their home or don't have chargers on their commuter route. So charging at a workplace really helps to make this transition equitable. So a lot of the presentation that we're going to be talking about today is about charging for employees at workplaces. We can please switch to the next slide. So why is it beneficial for having workplace charging, right? So we all know the obvious things like cleaner air and its sustainability and good for the environment, right? But also you're going to start to see employees at workplaces are going to start seeing electrification or electric vehicle infrastructure as a needed amenity and not necessarily a luxury. You're going to see happier employees and that want to stay with your company. You're able to retain top talent and also attract top talent. You can have a smaller company footprint, and oftentimes companies that lead in sustainability, they often enjoy a reputation as smart, community-driven leadership. So that's also another benefit for you. You can market this as like, hey, we're a sustainable company, in addition to just actually providing a benefit for your employees. Next slide, please. And specifically today, I want to talk to you about the Charge at Work program. So the Charge at Work program is a national DOE funded program, and this is administered by CalSTART. And the goal of it is to get Americans engaging in workplace charging. So this is workplaces for businesses, organizations, governments, and we really want to advocate for getting charging infrastructure in the ground. Can you go to the next slide, please? So the Charge at Work program is basically a concierge. We don't provide direct incentives through this program, but we are a concierge. Whether you're a mom and pop shop that wants to install one EV charger, or you're a large corporation that wants to fit out, 20 different locations around the nation, we can help you to get from point zero to actual installation of chargers in the ground. Two key elements of this program that are really beneficial. A lot of your utilities, depending on where you live, will offer a free site assessment, but a lot of utilities don't. So through this program, we do offer a free site assessment, which gets you to understand, have a foundational understanding of what you need to do from where you are to actually getting installation. How much conduit do you need to run? Where should I place the chargers? Everything like that, so you have a foundational understanding. And then the second key element to this program is that we offer a project management tool called the Project Builder, and this is specifically focused on helping you to plan out your electrification project. So this will allow you to compare charger types. Do I need level 2 charging? Do I need level 3 charging? Am I trying to integrate this with my fleet and have kind of dual use? How do I get this installed? What's going to be the CapEx cost, the OpEx cost? And we have a really robust project builder tool. Again, this is all free, and we give you this, and then you're able to plan out your project. And of course, we provide technical assistance throughout the whole thing. So these two elements here, the site assessment and also the project builder tool, allow you to go from 0 to 100 and actually getting installation in the ground. We also try to help to connect you to incentives and rebates in your area. We stay abreast of these things throughout the nation, as this industry is, ever changing and quite rapidly. So we serve, again, as a concierge through the Charge at Work program to really get you to where you need to be for installation. If you can please switch to the next slide. So again, this is just more about our project builder tool here, a really robust tool that you can actually take the graphs, wrap them up to your higher ups or other stakeholders within your organization to really get this project moving. Next slide, please. So this is, again, this Charge at Work program, and the website is chargeatwork.org. Again, we have the site assessment tool, the project builder tool, and we're really, again, these programs are completely free. And what we're trying to do is bolster and show that there's demand. We're really trying to show that there's demand for the Department of Energy and other organizations to continue to fund programs like this so we can develop further electrification infrastructure. I also want to talk to you about another program. So the sister program to the Charge at Work program is the Electric Vehicle Adoption Leadership Program. So the Charge at Work program, you can kind of look at that as the beginning. This is how I get started. This is how I actually get the infrastructure. This is how I move that along. The Electric Vehicle Adoption Leadership Program is another national DOE funded program. This one is administered by Fourth, and the objective of this program is to execute a nationwide charging program consisting of education, outreach, and technical assistance activities that enable a large-scale increase in workplace charging. So what we do in this program is try to recognize you for all your efforts towards transportation electrification. Next slide, please. So again, this program provides the technical assistance. It's a certification, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about the tiers of certification in just a second. Our next slide, please. So again, our objectives are really to reach out to the nation, develop further electric vehicle infrastructure, and help to recognize people for some unique things that they're doing in transportation electrification. So one of the first questions that I want to answer is eval eligibility, like who's eligible. Just like the Charge at Work program, governments, businesses, organizations are all eligible for this. Just to give you a little bit of context, EVNoire is a fully remote company. We have no physical charging infrastructure installed, but because of our efforts towards transportation electrification, we were also able to be certified at the bronze level eval certification. And again, I'll talk to you a little bit more about the tiers. But basically, as long as you're not a home office business and you're not using this exclusively for fleets, but you're also having a focus on workers, this program is for you. Next slide, please. So the certification process is pretty simple. It's a 15 to 20-minute questionnaire, really easy. We ask questions about like, hey, what kind of, do you have charging infrastructure installed? Do you incentivize your employees for taking public transportation? I'm working with a bank in Washington, D.C. that has an electric shoe shine machine. So we're really looking for any kind of effort towards decarbonization and electrification of transportation focused on employees, and we want to recognize you for that. And as part of this program, you fill out the questionnaire, you'll have access again to technical assistance. We can help walk you through this. We try to, if you have questions about further installation, we try to walk you through that as well, connect you with resources, incentives, again, through this program. So I want to talk to you on the next slide about the certification tiers. So the certification tiers, after you fill out that 15 to 20-minute questionnaire, you receive points. Our team assesses that questionnaire, and then you receive the point rating based upon bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. Again, EVNoire, no physical infrastructure whatsoever. We were able to get bronze, so bronze is not terribly difficult to achieve. We have some organizations that have installed solar panels and 20 different electric vehicle chargers and incentivize public transportation and do all these great things. And these are some of our platinum level organizations. And with some of these organizations, we're actually doing some marketing and some case studies actually for free that we're helping them to bolster kind of their sustainability pledge and their sustainability commitment there. So, in addition to like the marketing that we do, I also see people using this certification to bolster and to bolster their qualifications for grant applications, for RFP responses. It's just another thing to show your commitment towards transportation electrification that can help give you a leg up on the competition. And can we switch to the next slides? And so I'll give you a quick example. We had Harvard University sign on. I'm really happy about that. I think that was really cool. Harvard University obviously has multiple locations that they wanted to certify. So we have a process that if you have multiple sites that you want to certify within your organization, whether they're all on one campus or they're across a large geographic area, we have a multi-site application that you can use just to expedite that process. So you don't have to fill out a separate application for each one of your work sites. Next slide, please. So biggest question everybody wants to know, how much does it cost? So right now until November 1st, this program is actually free. So we've been administering this program for about a year. The program has been free for about a year. And on November 1st, we will have a small fee. It's not going to be large like the LEED certifications or anything like that. Very small fee. And honestly, there's so many discounts, whether you're a member of Best Workplaces for Commuters and so many different organizations, there's going to be significant discounts on this. So it's a really cheap certification that really gives you a lot of benefit to market your business and also help to show your commitment towards transportation electrification. If you can please switch to the next slide. So, we try to update this slide as much as possible, but there are so many organizations signing on, quite a few organizations that are probably on this call today. So thank you all for actually getting certified, and just many organizations. One cool thing that I've liked is like Harvard University. I've seen quite a few schools signing on, high schools and colleges, charter schools. So that's really great to see. And again, you don't pay us anything. These programs are administered by the Department of Energy, so that we can show that there's demand. We want to show that there is demand, so we will try to bolster these programs to show that there is that demand, both through the Charge at Work program and the eval certification. We can please switch to the next slide. So again, we talked about the Charge at Work program. This is the eval certification. Our eval certification website is just eval, E-V-A-L, certification.org. So we have another one of these presentations coming up that we're doing with Best Workplaces for Commuters. It's going to be on September 19th. That's Workplace Charging for Transportation Management Associations. I implore you to look at that presentation as well so you can learn a bit more about this. Again, EVNoire, Best Workplaces for Commuters, 4th CalStart. We are all very great resources for information on electrification when it comes to workplace charging and everything else that is in the world of electrification. So I really would like to talk to you all about this. If you have any questions, I'll have all my information, as you can see here, and then we'll also share it in the chat. Would love to connect with you. And if you have any questions, we're going to save them to the end, but please let me know how I can further explain these programs or help to see how these programs can help you. Right now, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to pass to my colleague, Jay Donnaway from Tacoma Public Utilities. Jay, please take it away.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Brandon. Feel like I've been drinking from the fire hose, so let's switch to sipping on some sweet tea. I'll only have 6 slides for you, but just want to share some of our experience in the employee and fleet charging area. A little more about myself, Association of Energy Engineers, CEM, and the resource conservation manager part means I'm the behind the fence conservation specialist trying to help the utility walk its talk. I've been into EVs far longer. If you can imagine a precocious first grader discussing the merits of the city car and the commuter car during the second Arab oil embargo with his father, who was busy punching holes in the North Sea as a drilling engineer. So I grew up in the oil patch, proud to say that the old man's driving nothing but electrics today. I was the first general manager of EVWorks.com in the US, where we were the first to upgrade Nissan Leafs from low capacity to late model high capacity battery packs. And those Leafs will drive farther than a brand new Leaf will today because they were lighter, more streamlined vehicles. We also built the first highway duty refrigerated van in the US and the first electric recreational vehicle in commercial service. And you can rent one of those today. And I've been a member for 20 years, and I'm now president of the Seattle Electric Vehicle Association, where we have been working to educate, proliferate, and innovate since 1980 continuously. So yeah, EV recharging is nothing new. That first slide is the first electric vehicle to arrive in Seattle. It's a 1900 Woods Electric that arrived after a 5-month overland journey from Chicago to Seattle. And that very vehicle is still in the Washington State History Museum collection today. And then you can see a Detroit Electric expedition to Mount Rainier in 1918, I believe that was. And they carried a mercury arc rectifier in their trunk for opportunity charging along the way, and a set of grappling hooks to throw across the wires when they couldn't find some place to plug in. So it's been around for a long time. Many of you probably know that EVs led the market until the invention of the electric starter motor, ironically. Next slide, please. When we get into fleet charging and employee charging on a campus, the big question is to network or not to network. That is the question. Networking portals give you the ability to manage loads, which is very important on some sites. You get the data, you get the revenue, and you get the data that may make you eligible for carbon fuel credits. At times in the past 2 years, those carbon credits have been worth as much as our wholesale electric costs. So that can be significant. Networking costs I've seen range between $150 and $400 a year per port. So you have to have a lot of usage to justify that networking cost. And then of course there's commissions on the power usage on top of that. So it adds a fair bit of cost. The manufacturer can update firmware, but we have had some issues. We abandoned one network after repeated software pushes scrambled our equipment, removed the power limits that we had programmed onto them. And we even had a 124 kilowatt excursion on a bank of EVSE that had been software limited to 80 kilowatts. Fortunately, we caught it before the transformer blew, but it's there are potential pitfalls. Non-network chargers also cost less. There's no ongoing networking fees with them. They are not legal for revenue usage in Washington State and probably many other places as well. Bottom line being, it can be just easier and cheaper if you're allowed to give away the power. Our local retail cost is about 10 cents per kilowatt hour, 9.8 to be exact after all fees are in. And then the load management. That's important. If you have limited power, you don't want to provide 7.2 or more kilowatts to every single head all the time if you don't have to. But there's more than one ways to skin that cat. Some of the earlier methods are as simple as a time clock to rotate one station on at a time. Of course, providing a smaller number of high power level 2 heads and having your employees move their vehicles. That can get difficult, testy, and costly. Or just provide level 1 charging. Level 1 EVSE over 8 hours can more than offset the average commute, yet not give away the farm if you don't want to incur the cost of billing for this equipment. And network equipment does go obsolete with cellular modems. You may only be looking at 5 years of service instead of 10 plus years of service from networked equipment that relies on cellular modems. Next slide, please. So here's a couple of scenes from our Tacoma Power campus. The top picture is our warehouse wall where we use state grant funds to implement employee charging. You can see 20 dual port heads there along the wall. We started far earlier than that, though, all the way back to the EV project in 2010 to 2012, installed public ports in the parking lot that didn't have a lot of dwell time, just where people come in to get permits and pay bills. So not a lot of nearby residences. So it wasn't an ideal spot for level 2, but couldn't take the leap into DC fast charging quite yet. And we just finished our first round of fleet EVs, surplusing out the 2011 Nissan Leafs and the Chevy Volts. Also tried XL hybrids, and our water fleet is now well along their way to converting over to Odine hybrid vans, which provide battery power for the long work times when they're just sitting next to a hole in the ground, providing power to tools and lights, air compressors, etc. They no longer have to run the engine for that function. We did add 20 those chargers along the warehouse wall in 22, and we had to change our rates. Staying abreast of the state laws is important. Originally, for almost 10 years, we charged a flat per session fee of $2, gives you 5 hours on the charger. Then we had to go to a per kilowatt hour rate based on state law. And I still find some installations out in the wild that are charging per session fees, which isn't allowed anymore. But again, we experience numerous issues as cellular modems become obsolete. We get intermittent communication. If you have intermittent communication, the charger may dispense a charge. It may look fine to the customer, but the fee will never show up on their bill and you won't get your revenue. So that's an issue. And picking EVSE that is upgradable over time rather than has to be replaced just because a modem goes obsolete, I personally find that important. Next slide, please. If you are installing EVSE, there's a lot of objections to go through. It's reserved parking for these special green vehicles. I don't get reserved parking. If you're giving away the charge, you'd say it's like giving away gas. Yeah, if you were giving it away at a rate of 1.4 cents per hour, maybe. EV usage, of course, meets our environmental goals, but we have state laws in Washington, many other places. In Washington, it's a $124 fine if you ice a parking spot that's an EV charging stall. Even if it's an EV that is not actively charging, technically they can be fined. And now as we're modernizing the EV fleet, one of the common objections is you don't need it. New EVs can go over 200 miles, just charge at home. Well, we have many people who don't have the ability to install level 2 at home, apartment dwellers, older housing stock, people without dedicated parking at their home, on-street parking. So the ability to charge at work can make all the difference in whether it's practical to own and use an EV at all. We can't afford it. Well, it may be the question of, can you not afford it? I don't work where I can't charge, and that's been the case for me for over 20 years. And the caliber of employee you're looking for may care about ancillary issues like this. Next slide, please. So I'll throw out some forward-looking statements, opinions that are only my own, but you can see, once again, with 200-mile range EVs, it may seem like it's an unnecessary luxury, but it's very important to serve the community that cannot easily charge at home. Networking costs are coming down, but technical obsolescence seems to be speeding up. The non-network chargers, I have units that have been in service for 10 years without issue, and that's important to get your return on that expensive equipment. But you may need to collect data for carbon credits, for environmental goals. We in Washington State have a low carbon fuels market, but it does not require individual head data. You don't have to catalog every single session. You can just say, this entire bank of EVSE consumed this many kilowatt hours in the course of a month. So we are using one utility grade billing meter to measure as many as 20 EVSE on a single panel. I use the phrase garage orphans. I have known people since 2012 that rely strictly on DC fast charging. I knew one lady who spent 5 years doing a DC fast every morning and every afternoon because she couldn't charge at her apartment and she couldn't charge at work. So charging at work would be a really valuable amenity to employees like that. And it's better for the grid. Instead of all these peaky loads, you have long, steady base load that utilities love. Level 1, even more so if it's a 14-hour duration charge overnight instead of charging hard for 2 or 3 hours and then going to sleep along with everybody else, contributing to the peaks rather than shaving the peaks. But these larger EVs, they're going to need managed charging. We're looking at medium-duty trucks that have a manufacturer recommendation of 30 kilowatt overnight charging if you're using the full range of the truck every day. So 30 kilowatts qualifies as DC fast charging. There are smaller, more affordable portable units to provide that, but not a lot of facilities have the unused panel capacity to dispense that times an entire fleet. So strategy on charging is very important as we grow our fleets. And what's the use case? You know, we have emergency response vehicles that have to be ready to deal with an outage at any time. We can't bank on 8 or 14 hours of overnight dwell time slowly sipping on a level 2. So high powered level 2, 80 amps at a 208 or 240 volts is used for our Ford Lightnings. Our line trucks may be getting those 30 kilowatt or even greater DC fast chargers, so their downtime is at a minimum and we keep their batteries hot and ready. Last point, stationary battery storage. It's very tempting for peaking loads and at peak shaving. You can get good payback if you are injecting power to the grid at the times of maximum demand. But I'd wager that payback will be better if there are 4 wheels under that battery. Vehicle to grid, I believe, has greatly underestimated potential in this country, especially for value returned on the customer side of the meter. And solar parking canopies. People don't think we have a lot of sun in the Northwest, but it provides all the power that I need for my personal fleet, and it slows down the degradation of the vehicles a lot if they're not in the sun, in the rain, growing moss in this climate. So vehicle to grid, I would put as a higher priority than stationary battery storage. Looking forward to your questions at the end. Thank you. On to Tom.
Wow, it's hard to follow those two guys. They provided a lot of great information. I took notes. Thank you, guys. Tom Pacheco, Colorado Department of Transportation. I work in the Office of Innovative Mobility, which means I don't do pavement, I don't do bridges. We look for opportunities like workplace charging, helping other people develop that internally. So could you go to my next slide, please? So The biggest thing we did is we developed a plan early on because the governor set a plan for the state of Colorado to have 940,000 electric vehicles by 2023. So as a Department of Transportation, we have to do our part. So we did a broad solution. When we talked about doing EV charging, we needed to start, first of all, with our fleet drivers. And so we wanted to make sure that as we address the concerns of our fleet drivers, it would go over into our commuters, our employees, and how, as we found these solutions, it would find solutions for them long term. And like Jay just shared, a lot of those things were like range anxiety. For us in Colorado, it's a couple of different things. Not only the range anxiety, but when you drive in these Colorado mountain towns, there's a lot of will you lose 50% of your range in cold weather? So we had to figure out a plan how we were going to overcome these challenges like this, get drivers to accept these electric vehicles and change the way they were thinking about these vehicles from the get-go, so we can just get them to drive our electric vehicles in our fleets. And we did a survey, and this is what they came back to us. What about the range anxiety? We lose 50% in your range in cold weather. Well, we had to stop and talk to them and say, you know what, it's not just cold weather, but it's hot weather too, because electric vehicles are just like us. They like 70-degree weather. Anything above that, they have to have the heater on. You're getting a little rain in the heater and it's over 70 degrees, you got to put the wipers on, and you're losing the same amount of energy you would be in a cold day with the air conditioner on and the wipers on. We have to wait for hours on your road trip to charge your EV. We had to talk about the different levels of chargers. There are not enough fast chargers. We had to talk about the programs that CDOT and the Department of Energy are putting together to put more chargers in. We had to talk about the NEVI plan. We had to use these maps to show people where the chargers are going to be so they could plan their trips. And a lot of asked us, EVs will catch fire and explode by themselves. Well, that's a myth we've all seen a lot of time. When you look at the numbers, but a lot of these vehicles aren't. There's got to be a reason why it's happening. And if you look back on it, what is that reason? Were they in an accident? Were they being charged incorrectly? So we had to dispel a lot of these myths. EVs are too expensive to buy new. Well, some are, but there's a lot of really good government initiatives to help overcome them. EVs pollute more than gasoline. Well, if you take a look at the vehicle as itself, no, they don't. If you look at the whole ecosystem from when they, developed the electricity at a coal burning plant, there's a lot of discussion behind that. So we had to do a lot of conversation around these. And so we go to the next slide, please. So we knew that was kind of an obstacle, overcoming these barriers. So we had to find a solution. So would you go to my next slide? So what CDOT did is we did a lot of driver education classes internally. CDOT hosts internal EV driver classes for people that were going to be driving these vehicles on a day-to-day basis on our fleets. We showed them how we collected data on how their range is going to match their set job title so they won't be running out of electricity. We showed them the basics of an ICE versus an EV. What different components, how you start it different, how does it handle different, how does it accelerate different? And that was a big thing. We taught these guys how to accelerate because we didn't want them getting away from them. And people were just surprised. This was really an interesting one. Difference between a gas pump and an EV station. Now, you go to a gas station, there's either a diesel pump or a regular fuel pump. There's not a level 1, level 2, level 3, and different types of charging handles. So we taught people what those mean. We also taught people, when you plug in that charging station, what's it mean when you push down on that button and release that charging station port from that vehicle? People thought, well, is it going to arc on me? Is it going to shock me? And we educated people about when you disconnect from that when you push down that's actually activating a switch to shut off the charging. So it's not an arc welder in your hand. It's turned off the power. How do I charge an EV? How do you walk up to the station, use your fob or use your app? Or how do you plug it in? How not to plug it in? How does regenerative braking work? And in Colorado, that's a huge thing to understand. I mean, huge. You drive these mountain passes and you accelerate up them, and you're losing more than what you would think on your range because the grade. But when you're coming back down, you go into regen and you're increasing that range. It's I did a trip last week and I pulled into the top of a mountain pass. I had 22 miles range. By the time I got off that mountain pass and where I got to my house, I'd gone from 22-mile range to 74-mile range, and I'd driven 68 miles. You got to get people to understand how to, how do I use a charger app? How do I plan my trips? Between those two things, you'll see where the charging stations are. You'll know where they're going to be. You'll know if they're up or not. You'll know what level charger and when you plan your trip, you look at the weather reports, and it was really pretty neat. So that's what we did. Education was so critical to us for our fleet drivers. And so, can you go to the next slide? So, what did CDOT do? We installed charging stations at CDOT locations. CDOT has electrified 22 different CDOT offices throughout the states. So we put in 96 charging stations throughout the states that work for fleet and work for employees. Now, 96 doesn't seem a lot since we have 8,000 employees, but you have to remember, we're covering the whole state footprint. So what we've done is we've used a lot of data to pick the places that are best suited for these vehicles based on the travel patterns of these vehicles. And then we go to the employees and say, look, we put a charging station here at this engineering office because that truck drives 100 miles a day. This level 2 charging station will adequately charge that vehicle overnight. If you have an electric vehicle personally and you're not doing over 100 miles a day, this type of electric charging and vehicle usage replicate exactly what you're going to use on a daily basis. CDOT has purchased PHEVs and BVs for the motor pool for day-to-day use. We have 22 PHEVs, 97 PHEVs, SUVs, 8 BV sedans, 120 SUV pickups and BEVs. And what we do is we put them in our motor pool, and when people go to reserve a vehicle for their day-to-day operations, they have to fill in where they're going for that day. And if they're going to go 40 miles out and 40 miles in, then we put them in an electric vehicle. They say, well, I need a bigger electric vehicle so I can throw boxes in it. Then we put them in a truck. We put them in an electric Blazer so they don't have those excuses. And as we do that, we're educating them to maybe transition to these electric vehicles to their own personal use. So a lot of these stations, if you look at this, there's no fences around them. So they're public facing. We have several locations that are public facing. Some are behind our fences because I just shared it 2 weeks ago. We had a driver come in and his app wouldn't work and he couldn't get the station to work. So he ripped the ports clean off the charger. Just ripped them off, threw them on the ground and left. And so some are behind a fence based on, some security reasons we've had. So that's a little bit, I'm not happy about it because we really want to move this needle forward. Next slide. The results. I mean, this has been really successful for CDOT. Our PHEVs and BVs are the most requested vehicles in our motor pool now. And people even they'll plan their trips. I had a guy drive an 8-hour trip. He drove from Denver to the southwest corner of Colorado in a Ford Lightning. He said, I'm going to stop and charge twice. I said, how do you know that? He goes, I figured it out on my route planner on my app. I mean, and months ago, those guys would say, oh, I'm not going to take a Lightning. I'm going to take an ICE. I go, why are you driving that truck? He goes, it's so quiet, so easy to drive. It's so fun to drive. And they're requesting it. As of today, we have 122 CDOT employees that have purchased EVs to drive personally based on some of their experiences they've had in our motor pool. That's a huge success for us. Now they're using these charging stations for personal use. All 122 employees have installed home chargers. So, they can get back and forth, and employees are allowed here to charge their vehicles up to 4 hours a day and only pay for the energy. We say 4 hours because when you have 122 CDOT employees wanting to charge their cars, you only have 96 chargers between them and the fleet. You can't give them a whole day to charge, but they love it, and they only pay for the energy. They don't pay for the charging station. They don't pay for the infrastructure. They don't. We know we have to pay for that because of our fleet. We know we need that, so we pay for that up front. And a large percentage of these guys have become ambassadors for EVs to other employees and others. So we'll do a ride and drive, and we have employees say, "Hey, pick me. Can I show up to that ride and drive and tell people about the experience, how CDOT's gone from evaluating what the needs were for the fleet, right sizing the vehicles for the fleet, so we knew what kind of experience those would be, to allowing us to charge at those charging stations." So to us, it's been a really positive environment. It's we really like it here. Anyway, so my next slide. If I can help anybody, sharing the information, we talked in the beginning about I'm installing electric charging stations out there. Yeah, I do that. That's my main title, Electrification Program Manager. So since I do charging stations throughout the whole state, I do deal with those. We have 52 different utility companies or co-ops in the state of Colorado. I handle all the permits in all those areas. I do the environmental studies in all those areas. We do the site assessments. We do evaluation with our GPS to see which vehicles that are fit for purposes there. So I do a lot of that, and it's just been a really good success project. So if I can help with any of that, share any of this information, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Tom. That was really great. And Tom, Jay, and Brandon, I really learned a lot from all three of your presentations, and I'm sure our audience did. Well, it looks like the Q&A is just blowing up here, and we're going to start right in with the questions. We have a really active audience, which is great. So I'll, feel free to discuss any questions amongst yourself, and I'll start with the first one. So this one looks like it's for you, Brandon. For the eval certification, what is the process like for updating your organization's information when more stations are installed?
That's awesome. Yeah. So right now, again, to November 1st, the process is free for you to actually do that. Now, let's say 6 months down the road that you want to recertify and you want to get a higher level of certification, you're able to do that. Obviously, that fee at that time will apply after November 1st, but it's a pretty simple thing to do. Now, if you are to get on for free, this is a lifetime certification. So if you're doing it before November 1st, you pay, it's done. You don't have to recertify the next year. And same thing, if you do it after November 1st and you certify, you don't have to recertify again every year unless you want a higher qualification. So only if you want a higher tier do you have to then recertify and actually have a different charge. But besides that, you certify once, you're good to go.
Great. Thanks so much, Brandon. While you are right here, I'm going to ask the second one. What is the most actively engaged state for participating in the Charge at Work program so far?
That's interesting. I almost feel like Karen Apple might have asked that question, but I think I think it's Arizona thus far. If I have to say that, I've been really excited about, and I will say there's some close runner-ups though. I think Arizona we've engaged with the most. Obviously, like Colorado is really big there. California, I'm partial to California, so I think California is always superlative. But Arizona, and I want to actually say North Carolina, I've actually been really surprised by. And then we've engaged quite a bit. We work with the Pittsburgh Regional Clean Cities, and Rick up there. They're really engaged as well in the Pittsburgh area specifically. So, but really we're seeing this all over in surprising states and cities like Raleigh, North Carolina.
Great, that's interesting. So sounds like there might be a little competition there amongst states.
Right.
Okay, so Tom, you're in Colorado. What's the best way to plan for winter driving for really anyone who is getting ready for that winter coming up?
A lot of these vehicles, if you have a charger at home, a lot of these vehicles have a pre-warming setting on their vehicles, like the Ford Pro charger. So I would definitely make sure if you have that on your vehicle and your charger, I would definitely use that. The second thing is plan your route. I mean, are you going to go up into the mountains? Are you going to go down through the south corridor, which is very flat? Really take that into consideration, the elevation differential that you're going to be experiencing on your trip. If you're going to do a steep climb in the mountains, I would really consider knowing every place a DC fast charger is placed as a backup. But on the front end, I would just, as a rule of thumb, safety, divide your range in half. Because I can tell you this, I did a drive in the mountains and it was 22 below, and the wind was blowing, I had the wipers on, the defrost on, and I planned my route and I knew exactly pretty close where it was going to be. And I mean, to the T almost, I knew exactly where I had to charge. And when I got to those locations, I had enough to get me to the next charging station, but I did divide my range in half. And I planned for the worst conditions, and it was bad out there. Hope that helps.
Yeah. Did you, Jay, did you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I love the remote preheat feature of EVs. We've put over 200,000 miles on the lowly Mitsubishi iMeave, but that radio remote preheat can melt 2 inches of snow off the windshield while you're still eating breakfast in a 30-minute preheat session, and that doesn't affect your range at all. Also, winter range reduction is completely dependent upon battery pack temperature. So if your battery's at 70 degrees, the only range losses you'll experience are if you're driving through snow or using winter tires that have higher rolling resistance. And in many cars, it's easy to forget about the extra load you're putting on as in running the defroster. Blowing hot air at the windshield is hard to notice, but an hour later, you say, oh my gosh, what happened to my charge? Because you've been heating the outside through that pane of glass.
Great, thanks for
And a quick comment about those snow tires. It's really interesting. Different types of snow tires change it. Like we use Blizzaks on our Chevy Bolts, and it didn't change the range at all. Then we use the Goodyear aggressive mud and snows, and it decreased the range by 25%. So the tread blocks, how aggressive they are, really changes the range also.
I have noticed big differences, yes.
That's really interesting. Well, thank you for that. Okay, thanks for those answers. That's really interesting about the tires and winter driving. Okay, here is a question for all of you, for all panelists. Are there any EVSE companies that will install, own, and maintain charging infrastructure at no initial cost and recoup the costs through usage fees and/or ads? And then the person asked, I know Volta used to do it with ads, but they are part of Shell Recharge now. So that's for any of you to answer.
So I'll take a first crack at that. So yes, I mean, whoever asked that question, you obviously know a lot about that. We call that like infrastructure as a service. I think that's a great way, and we advocate a lot for that in the Charge at Work program. A lot of times we see one of the biggest barriers to entry is that initial investment. So there are companies out there, Lizeth Garza at EV Passport, I know does this. I know there are a lot of other organizations that offer this infrastructure as a service. Sometimes it's maybe not a zero cost, it may be a low cost, significantly less than you would spend with that initial investment otherwise. And then they have different kind of programs where there's like a revenue share model. So yes, to answer your question, there are a number of programs that are doing that. And as this business model kind of takes flight within the industry, you're starting to see more companies and these programs become more refined. So yes, that is an awesome option, especially if you're not necessarily trying to generate profit off of this. So if you're like a school or organization like that doesn't need the profit, you just want to provide this amenity. Yes, there are organizations out there that are doing that. And if you'd like, reach out to me after this. I'll put my information in and we can kind of discuss what some of the benefits of those programs are.
I just want to add, we did a lot of research on that for a lot of our projects, and it didn't fit our needs exactly, but we did that with a couple schools and stuff, and it meant what their needs were exactly. So just do your research, because there's not one, one solution doesn't fit all, but that solution is a really viable solution for a lot of good placement of projects. And it takes a lot of the work a lot of the headaches out of projects if you do it correctly and work with them and work with the company you're going to work with. There's huge benefits to it, huge benefits if it fits your project.
Great. Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that question? Okay, we will move along to another one. This is interesting for Tom. So you mentioned the EV driver education class. Can you tell us who the audience was for the class? Was it the general public or CDOT employees?
Well, it started out as a CDOT employees, and we gave it to every one of our drivers that are going to be using EVs. And then we had a request from the Colorado Auto Dealers Association if we would help put a program together for them to deliver it to every electric vehicle customer that was going to purchase a vehicle. So we worked with a part where right now in the process of developing a class that every EV driver is going to get a certificate from the auto dealer they buy a car from to go get that training. And so, yeah, so it started out with the CDOT employees, but the request has been for any EV driver, and it's been really a great plan. And what's really cool is the company we're working with is going to tailor the training. It's it's an 8-hour class. Tailor the training to the vehicles that they purchase. So it's not going to be a generic training. They're going to go in there and learn how to do the one pedal driving with a bolt, how to put it down into low, the characteristics of a bolt. And it's really, yes. So yeah, they've expanded it to anybody that wants it. That as they buy vehicles, they'll be able to get that coupon to go to that one-day driving class. And we've done it.
That's great.
We've shared it with all the other state agencies. We've started with the city and county agencies. We've offered it to utility companies. So yeah, it's really expanded.
That's great. Education is so important. So
Yes.
It's really great you're doing that in Colorado. Okay, let's see. I just wanted to let the audience know, if you look in the Q&A box, Jay answered some live in there, so you can click on answered and read some of his answers that were typed into to a few questions you had. So let's see, let's move along here. So let's see, this one's for Brandon. How long does it typically take to implement an EV charging system through the Charge at Work program, start to finish? I'm with a small city with a lot of tourism activities, so we're looking into elevating our accessibility.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, right? And I think it's very relevant. To be honest with you, there's so many variables in there that it's hard to give you an exact answer, but I will tell you it's probably going to take you more than 3 months. It probably won't take you 3 years. I know that's a really large range, but it really depends on the scope. So given the information that you gave there, I could say it could be realistic that you get something in 6 months. It depends on, what your funding is. Are you just paying for all of this up front? Do you need to get funding? Do you need to access rebates? Are you using that infrastructure as a service? So there's a number of variables that go into it. But I would say, like, if you use the Charge at Work project builder, it's really quick. It doesn't take you that long. You can do it in like half an hour, maybe less than that. And you can really actually get a little bit better of a perspective of your actual project. So to answer that in a little bit shorter way, I would say you're probably looking at 6 months to a year on average projects, but then you have larger projects that require like trench shoring and just a lot of different infrastructure development that could take significantly longer. You're talking about permitting. There's a lot of variables that go into it, but I think given the use case that you said, you can expect like 6 months to a year, potentially shorter if you are really on it and can just expedite it through some of those variables.
Great. Okay, this question's for anyone on the panel. What do you think is the most successful strategy for changing people's minds about EV?
If you don't
Jay, you
mind.
want to start?
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
I'll jump in as a card-carrying member of the National Electric Drag Racing Association. After I blow their doors off riding in a sleeper jelly bean across the intersection, they always have more questions. The guys with lifted trucks in my neighborhood know not to line up against my 1999 Ford Ranger EV. And my lifetime refueling cost is 2.4 cents a mile. And that's heavily weighted by public charging at retail rates with my small battery cars. When I plug in at home, it's 1.8 cents per mile. So you can't beat it at the pocketbook, especially if you're claiming over 60 cents a mile in business mileage reimbursement.
So for
Great.
mine, it's the experience in education. It always boils down to me that we had an experience where we took the state patrol drivers up to their test track and delivered 2 Ford Lightnings and 2 Ford Mach-E's up there to the instructors for the Colorado State Patrol drivers. And when we unloaded them, they said, these things are junk. We're never going to do electric vehicles. We're never going to be driving these. And so I turned and looked at the Ford guy and said, they want to know how hard they can drive them on this test track. And the guy from Ford said, if they break them on this track, means we didn't build them correctly. So they got to drive those things for an hour and a half as hard as they could, any way they want, including doing J turns, racing them backwards, whatever, for an hour and a half. At the end of the hour and a half, the head instructor walked up to me and I said, what do you think? And he had the biggest smile on his face. He says, these things are incredible. Now the governor's security detail drives Mach-E's here in Colorado. All it took was education and experience. And those guys, the state patrol instructors. I mean, these big macho state patrol guys, big diesel trucks and Mustang GTs. And all they said is, these are incredible. Incredible. So yeah, they said they had to educate their drivers on 2 things: not to over accelerate out of a corner and how quickly they handle. They were just so impressed with them. It was really an amazing experience.
Yeah, Julie, I think, my colleagues, Jay and Tom said it best. I don't really have a lot to add there, but I just wanted to touch more on that experience piece. Like, we host ride and drives. We'll do like a lot of in-person events and introduce people to the world of electrification overall, because it's not just the consumer cars, right? We have the medium and light duty trucks. We have now starting to get the heavy duty vehicles. We have drones and autonomous vehicles and everything like that. So really introducing people to the world of electrification. And showing them, different use cases, exactly how Tom was saying, I think is a really great way to do that. These webinars are a great way to do that. It's just exposing people to the actual use cases for their everyday lives that really helps to change minds.
That's great. Those were terrific answers. Love that. Okay, so it looks like we have time for one final question. Let's see. So that would be for everyone to answer. Is there an industry organization that offers a vetted vendor agnostic list of companies that offer industry as a service program?
So I will say that I'm not sure off the top of my head if anybody has aggregated those yet. I would say that maybe EVNoire and the whole Charge at Work program and CalStart, we probably know quite a few because we literally directly work with a lot of these people to recommend them. But I'll let Jay or Tom, answer if they know any aggregators there. But if you have questions about that, definitely reach out to me and I can at least expose you to the companies that I know. They're all going to absolutely be vetted. And then there's probably some more that are popping up every day or that are starting to offer that service. So please reach out to us and I can offline with you on that.
I don't have a complete list, but I know that the state of Maryland, the National Association of State Procurement Officers, did a NASPO agreement for electric vehicle charging stations nationwide. And on that award, I think we're 4 companies that do provide a turnkey solution from managing the whole project from beginning to end. And they were awarded. So yes. The thing I would caution is they were awarded because of all the what they do from start to finish, but their cost was higher. So I would really be interested, Brandon, to see what your list of you put together, because I would just caution that they, they're working with state agencies on that NASPO agreement, and they have to have a set price. So since they have to have a set price, they can't go any higher. So they set it right at the limit of what they're going to charge.
I know that Washington State's enterprise services statewide contract had a turnkey charger management component for years, but that just renewed on September 1st, and I'm not sure if it's still available. we have an absolute epidemic of cord cutting going on in the Seattle region, with cables being sliced for scrap copper. And I've done webinars on that subject and have prototypes built of armored cables if anybody wants to reach out regarding that. So it's very expensive to guarantee uptime for a fixed price. Not impossible.
Well, thank you, everyone. We are out of time. This has been a very lively session with great audience interaction. We'll be sending out a link to the recording so everyone can watch and forward it to anyone who has interest. And also we'll be sending you out an evaluation. And Christina's also put that in the chat if you'd like to take it to provide us with feedback and ideas for other webinars in the future hosted by Best Workplaces. Now, this was a series of 5 webinars. So the final webinar is going to be on September 19th. And this one is workplace charging for transportation management associations. So spread the word. And again, I just want to thank Jay, Tom, and Brandon. That really was an amazing session. We have your contact information here. And so I think everyone was really interested in this session and what you had to provide. And I really learned a lot too about EVs during the session. So thank you again. And we look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you again for everything.